Thanks for coming, everybody. I know it's a small crowd and it's pretty tough to get out this time of year because it's exam season. But yeah, so the Ontario Public Interest Research Group, or OPIRG for short, has organized and funded this event because we think it's awesome for people to cycle all year round, and for cycling to not really be an alternative form of transportation, but a form of transportation that's normal. Yeah, so, and also just a really quick land recognition piece that we bike on and we walk on and we work on unceded Algonquin territory. So OPIRG wants to recognize that a lot and think about that as, I don't know, you use this land, bike on it, and work on it. So yeah, I'm going to pass it over to these awesome folks from Cycle Salvation? Cycle Salvation. Yeah, so we can start it off.
So first thing that you want to worry about when you're having a winter bike is what your winter bike's actually made out of. You want to get a frame that's not too crappy. You don't want to get a nice frame because then it's going to get wrecked. First thing about winter bike, it's going to get wrecked. Sooner or later, it is not going to last you forever. Other normal kinds of bikes, if you take care of it, you can get it to last a very long time. Winter bikes, you're lucky if you take good care of it, 5 years. So you want to get a frame that's nice, an alloy, but not way too nice, because then you're just, throwing your money away. And you want to get nice alloy, not nice, but, a good set of alloy wheels on it, because steel, all the wet and salt when you're biking around the winter, steel will just rust up. It will not last you very long at all, so you definitely do not want to go steel wheels, steel frame on a winter bike at all.
Yeah,
just
it's also
poor
braking too.
Oh yeah, poor braking as well as longevity. But another thing this bike doesn't have it is when you're routing your cables, you want to try and get to route the cables along the top part of your bike, because all the stuff, all the salt and slush kicking up in winter, that can get into your cables a bit. You'll see it slow down your braking, your shifting. Although shifting, really, you shouldn't really have much cables showing anyways. You should try and keep the cables showing to a minimum, because the less cable showing, the less, stuff is going to get in there, and once it gets cold, the cable can seize up inside of the housing, and that'll, not be good for your braking power. Good to have fenders on there, because that's another thing that will keep slush and salt from kicking up. Cool thing that you can do to really keep it from slush and everything from kicking up is taking a 2-liter pop bottle, cutting it in half, and then just putting it along here. And that's poor man's fender for the bottom tube. It's also good to have a thinner tire in the front than the back, because a thinner tire in the front will help you cut through the snow, while the back will give you traction. If you have both thin, then the back, where most of your weight's being applied, is going to skid all over the place. But if you have both of them knobby, then you're not going to have as good power in the front for cutting through snow. So you want to have the front to cut through and the back to help you actually stay on the road. Definitely good to cover your bike in reflectors, because during the winter it gets dark early, so you're going to have to be more visible. It's good to, if you do have gearing, to try and keep internally geared, which is, as Paul held up earlier, this sort of deal where this isn't shifting at all. It's all the shifting is actually done inside of here, and just like the cable goes inside, and so no snow can get all in between the gears, as opposed to this where as you're pedaling you'll get all the snow and salt inside here, which by the end of the season you'll have a completely wrecked rear wheel.
And luckily we have these kind of 3-speed hubs in our shop, so the beauty about our not-for-profit is we have a lot of cheap internally geared 3-speeds.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you are the type to want to build up a wheel, you could go at night when Recycles is there and they can sort of show you just the basics, and then you could lace yourself up a cheap 3-speed and you got like gears throughout the winter.
And we got all sorts of good cheap crap at our shop, donation only, so we get a lot of stuff like that. Another cool trick to do is if you have some inner tubes that have holes in them or something, cut them up and sort of like take your handlebar off. like, you know, put it over top of the seal here, so that way this little, you know, seam in between the cups, you can cover it up with an inner tube, and then that'll, again, you know, stop salt and slush from getting in there.
Yeah. You also do that at the bottom one too. So it's a really good trick. You can top and
cups.
Yeah.
And it's good to have like this sort of upright riding style, because you know you don't want to be all hunched over during the winter, because it's a lot harder to turn on those kind of, well, if you know, throw your weight into it, but you know you don't want to be throwing your weight into a turn and then, uh-oh, I'm going over an icy patch, and then you know you skid out in the middle of the street at an intersection. Not a good scene. Solid axles are definitely better than quick release for the winter, because say hollow axles, they can't take as much stress, and again, stuff getting on the inside of them causing rust and, you know, stuff not turning as smoothly, whereas solid axles, it's, you know, one solid axle and it can hold up a lot better.
Yeah. I sometimes also find with quick releases on the back, they, if you're putting a lot of torque on it, the wheel might jar itself loose. And then in winter conditions, when everything's kind of frozen solid, you don't want to be messing around trying to get the quick release to actually engage again. And it's just, yeah, bad
That's
scene.
pretty much everything, eh?
Yeah, for the most part, in terms of the bikes, yeah. I was going to show this one as well. A lot of times when we don't have internally geared hubs, you can do something like a poor person's 3-speed. I don't know if you can see this, but it's just basically a single speed cog that you'd get like off a BMX bike with a freewheel, with a derailleur that's locked in place so it can't shift. There's no cabling for it, so all the cabling that would go on the bike is gone, and essentially you do all your shifting on the front. So you have what's a 3-speed with fewer cogs in the back that are all going to get gummed up with slush and grit and crap, and you just have this one part here that moves. So the front derailleur moves, and that's the only thing. So you're not reducing all the componentry on the bike, but you're limiting, you know, what is going to be moving back and forth. So this is also a very handy thing to do, because in my experience, you don't need a lot of gears. You don't need 21 speeds. In the wintertime, I find 3 is fine, as long as you're not going over like really crazy hills and stuff like that. And you should go pretty good. And this is a bit of a cheaper option than this kind of bike. So the one that Graham was talking to is more like a fully overhauled bike that we do at Cycle Salvation, versus something like this that we would just sort of safety check and make fine for the winter. So this one would probably last you a few more seasons if you look after it. This would probably be good for, like as Graham says, no more than like 3 to 5 years. And but the difference in price is a big one. So if you're on a budget, you could spend something like about $50 to $80 on something like this, versus about $175 to $200 for something like this at our shop. So it really depends on what your budget's, you know, for winter riding. The thing about this bike I like are stainless steel spokes versus something like this, which is just regular steel, and you can sort of see that there's rust already on this guy, and that's going to contribute to reduced longevity for riding. The other thing I don't like about this one, the fenders are kind of flopping around, and this guy here has the struts, which will hold it in place a lot better, and you know, it'll basically keep the fender from jamming up a lot more than this one might. I don't know.
I have a question about, like I was looking and I've seen like studded tires. Like how necessary are those like in somewhere like Ottawa? I don't know.
Yeah, like you'll actually notice on this bike here, it's kind of hard to see, but this one actually is a studded tire.
Oh.
And it's got probably more than 60% of its life gone. Like the tips are actually pretty much worn down. So on a studded tire, you only want to ride it for the time where you've got icy conditions. If it's not icy out there and you're just riding on the bare pavement, the studs, unless it's got like union carbide tips, they're going to wear out pretty quickly. And for a studded tire, you're spending about, I'd say, $80 to like over $100 for something that's really good. I don't find them necessary myself. But then again, you know, if you're riding a lot and you're having to ride in all sorts of conditions, you may want to opt for like a wheel that has a studded tire on it for the times when it's really slippery out. And then basically when it's not that way, just switch out your wheel for something that just has a knobby front tire or like a narrow treaded tire. And then you'll get a bit more use out of your studded tire for when you need it. You only need one studded tire on your bike on the front, so that way it basically will control any kind of slide out, because when you're riding, most of your weight's going to be on the back anyway, and it's not going to slide from underneath. If you're really adventurous, you can make your own studded tire, and it's pretty cool to do. You can get a bunch of steel, what do you call them, screws for duct work. And as long as you don't get them too long, you can just like drill them into each knob on your tire. It takes about 3 hours to do, and you might get a couple of years wear out of it, but it's fun. And if you go on YouTube, you can find all sorts of information about how to do that. It's a good question, though. Any other questions?
I might have like a simpler question. Is it better to use like thicker tires or like the thin ones for winter riding? I don't know the terminology for them.
Oh, you mean like width in terms of?
Yeah.
Yeah, as Graham said, it's good to ride, I find, with a narrower tire in the front, and then a nice thick tire in the back, just mainly so that you can sort of control your steering a little easier, especially through like snow drifts and stuff. A lot of it's also going to depend on the terrain that you're having to ride on. Like if you're going across the experimental farm, I kind of like doing that on knobby tires, both front and back, on the roads there. But if you're going through like, I don't know, the roads through downtown Ottawa, I do like the thin one on the front and the thick one on the back. You'll also see a lot of couriers that just ride like almost thin tires both front and back with their fixed gear, which allows them to like do skids and stuff. I don't know if I'd want to do that, but the more experience you get, you can sort of play around with that. It's a good question. If there's no other questions about the bikes, I guess I could move on to,
Oh,
yeah.
I do have one about brakes.
Brakes?
I often find my brakes freeze up.
Yeah.
Any tips on that?
Yeah. The one good thing about how to keep your brakes from freezing up is limit the amount of housing, like cable housing here, between the brake lever and the brake. So on the front, you'll usually find that your brake is pretty responsive.
Right.
But in winter riding, you don't want to use your front brake all that much. So you got to use your back one, and you want to do the same kind of deal. So on this bike here, you can sort of see that the brake itself has the housing that just stops right there, and then the rest is just cable on this one that goes all the way up. So if you can reduce the amount of housing, and then you just grease the inside of your cable with just like fresh petroleum grease, that'll keep it from basically sticking on you. So you may have to do that. Yeah, just like regular
Like the ball bearings?
Yeah, like bearing grease.
It's the bearing grease.
Yeah, yeah. Because that grease is going to stay in there. Like I wouldn't just use like oil.
Okay, bearing grease.
Yeah, use bearing grease. So yeah, before you get your bike on the road for winter, make sure you've got like fresh grease in your cables.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So can we just cut off that case?
Yeah, what you can do is as long as you've got what's called a housing stop, so something like that,
Right.
then yeah, you can cut off the casing, or you should have the casing terminate there. What you don't want to have is you don't want to like ride like a super cycle that's got the casing going all the way down and all the way to your brake, and then just going along the top tube or the sloping top tube, because that's just going to freeze up with moisture, and then you're just going to find that your brake is going to like stop, but then it won't disengage. And the only thing that I can recommend about that is just make sure you've got fresh grease.
Fresh grease.
Before you start your season. Yeah.
One thing about the wheels,
Yeah.
I've heard that for like fresh snow is better to have like slicks, like 25s, rather than like threaded tires, and that for like ice patches it's probably better to discuss like that. Is that something.
Yeah, for icy patches, you want to try and make sure that when you're riding, you should have a studded tire if you're going to go over it. Or if you don't have a studded tire, if you see like some black ice on the the surface, make sure your bike is kind of upright,
Right.
kind of like that.
Because I just have like 25 on my bike, and I want to know if I'm gonna die on that.
And when you say 25, what do you?
Like 25 foot. Like six.
Oh, yeah, 25 is pretty narrow. Like you're probably riding a road bike, I would think.
Yeah, it's not like this.
Yeah. So yeah, 25 would be pretty like that. That would be the narrowest I'd want to go like in the front. I would probably prefer to ride something more like about 28. And when we talk about those numbers, that's just the width in millimeters for your tire. And I would probably ride like something that's around 38 to 40 in the back and maybe 30 in the front.
Just like if it's like really snow, like I'm not planning on riding when it's like major snowstorm.
Yeah.
But when it's like okay conditions, should be okay.
Yeah, you'd be okay for that. Yeah, definitely.
One more question about the gears.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts between like free hub, like freewheel, or like a fixed gear on that?
I don't like to ride fixed myself, just because I'm an old man, and my knees are kind of shot. If you have to like stop really quick and you're riding a fixed gear bike, just do make sure that you've got a proper handbrake as opposed to trying to use your your legs to actually stop you. I would opt for the freewheeling option, just so that you've got enough things to look for when you're riding on the streets, and paying attention to your bike handling skills. You kind of want to not have to worry so much about geez, do I have to stop really quick on the fixed,
Right.
So if you do want to ride like a single speed, I would say like basically get a freewheeling. The one drawback when it gets really cold, like super duper cold, and we're talking like about -20 temperatures, the gears, or what they call the ratcheting mechanism on the freewheel, will freeze up. And then you'll find that if you're riding and it's okay, and then you stop riding, and then the temperature kicks in and it's really cold, you actually won't have any kind of torque. Like you'll just be spinning as if you've got no gear, no chain, and that's basically the ratcheting mechanism in the freewheel is frozen up. And the only way that you can get it to free up is one of two things. You can bring it inside to a warmer climate, where the salt and everything will ravage your bike. Probably okay if you just need to get going somewhere. Or the other option is just to like drop the bike on the ground like that, and just try and get the thing freed up. And that'll do two things. It'll kick off any kind of salt, slush, whatever that's on your drivetrain and stuff. But it will also sort of, free up the mechanism, and then that'll let you go. Cassette-based wheels are a bit different, and luckily now we're getting into more and more bicycles that have cassettes, if you guys know what I'm talking about.
Is that what you had over there? All the turn?
This one right here, yeah, both these bikes are freewheels. A cassette, what you'll see. Do you want to explain cassette?
All right, sure.
Yeah. Graham will explain what a cassette is like.
The difference between a freewheel and a cassette is that a freewheel basically it goes on a different sort of hub. The hub of a freewheel has just a bunch of threads coming out of the hub, and then you just take the freewheel, which also has threads on it, and then you just thread it on, and that's all it is. With a cassette, it looks a bit different. Instead of having threads on it, it has a sort of, it still has threads, but more on the inside of it. And it has a body that goes on. The body doesn't have any of these gears on it. The body is just a sort of cylindrical shape, about that long, and it goes on. Then you put an Allen, a hollow Allen bolt in there. It goes all the way through. Then that gets tightens the body down. Then you have your rings, which go on staggered with spacers in between, with a top sort of. What would you call it? Not a spacer, but it looks like a spacer.
It's like a lock ring?
Yeah, like a lock ring, but for a cassette. And you tighten that down on top of it, and just the fact that it's all staggered with spacers in between and it's squeezing together, it's just a lot more solid and has a lot more longevity than the freewheel.
Yeah. If you bought a bike within the last 5 years, chances are it's going to use this cassette-based system. Yeah.
Because cassettes are just a whole lot better.
Yeah.
I did have a question. You mentioned bringing your bike into the warm. Not. Where should one be storing a bike all winter? Like if I bike every day,
if you bike
bring
every
the bike
day,
inside or leave it in?
It's probably best to leave your bike outside. Yeah, because what will happen is as long as it doesn't, the weather doesn't go like crazy warm like it did yesterday, your bike will not have the salt eat away at your system. So if you can keep it outside, then you'll keep the rust from actually having a chance to take over your bike. If you bring it in from a cold environment to a warm environment, and then go from a warm environment to a cold environment again, like that's just going to allow your the elements to eat away at it. So I usually prefer to leave your bike outside. Yeah. Plus the other thing too is you'll have to bring it inside, and you got to be careful about getting like slush and stuff dripping all over your floors and whatnot, maybe cheesing off your roommates. Stuff like that. Yeah.
What to wear while riding or safety?
Actually, what we talk about is before we do that, maintenance tips. Tips. Do that.
Sure. Well, just for maintenance, making sure that your cables stay lubricated for the parts that are inside the housing. Just put a bit of oil or some form of lubrication in there. What we use at the shop is just a little bit, use a bit of grease. I mean, grease in here works pretty well. Oil your chain a bit. Always make sure your chain's oiled. Put oil inside of your hub. I'm not really good with maintenance on winter bikes.
Oh, that's okay. I usually like to say about once a week at least. Once a week, oil your chain, because that's the key is making sure your drivetrain is going to allow you to get to where you want to go. And the way you sort of tell whether your chain needs oil, when you're riding, you're probably going to hear a lot of squeak, 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 squeak. When you're going through each revolution, your chain needs oil for sure at that point. Or if you see like a chain that looks very dry, it's not holding any kind of oil to it. Like for instance, I did that. Chain certainly got enough on there for the next few days. But yeah, as you're riding, just sort of pay attention if you can, just what sounds your bike is making, and then you'll know whether or not it needs some oil. But good guideline, at least once a week. Just make sure your bike has got at least a fresh bit of chain oil on it. As far as oil goes, you can actually use chainsaw oil. Chainsaw oil, winter weight, is the best thing to do. In fact, all our bikes that we put out on the sales floor don't have like this specialty oil that you get from a bike shop, and it's just regular chainsaw oil. You'll also want to not necessarily ride with full pressure in your tires. If it's kind of cold, you may want to drop it. Like say you're running about 60 pounds, like 60 psi. I'd go down to even like 40 on a mountain bike. On a road bike, you typically ride around like 100 psi. I might go down to about 80. And what else for maintenance? A lot of people forget to actually grease their seat post, and that's fine, provided that if you ever have to lower your seat post, like let's say it's like stupid icy on the streets, and you just want to make sure you have enough clearance between you and the top tube, you might want to run your seat post down. If you haven't greased your seat post, you may find that it's seized, and that would be a real shame. So do make sure that you do have fresh grease in there, as Graham said. And that's so much about it for maintenance. Other tips that you may want to have, if you want to try and prevent flats, you could run a couple of extra things of rim strips in your rims, if you know what that is. It's basically on each rim there's like a little rubber strip, and I find having like a couple extra ones in there is good, just to prevent the spoke nipples from actually causing a snake bite. If you're running a homemade studded tire, the heads of the screws, you may want to have an extra piece of inner tube just between the inner tube and the tire, because your studded tire has got too many of these heads sticking into the inner tube. It might cause a puncture. And the last thing you probably want to do is have to change flat in the middle of your ride. Any questions on maintenance? For riding style, as Graham mentioned, I do like the mountain bikes or hybrids.
Sorry, I do have actually one question about maintenance. Sorry to interrupt you. But what about like in terms of like salt and damage and stuff like that? I guess just like wipe it down and like
wipe it down. Yeah, it's a very good point.
Bicycle.
Wipe it down with like a dry cloth rag,
Okay.
and just do that on your frame. And if you see a lot of like salt caked on your bike, just on the frame itself, just wipe that down. And or if there's like a really change in the temperature where it's going to be warm, try and clean your bike. Clean it outside, and do that. Some people also just take WD-40 and just spray the whole thing outside if you're just pressed for time, and you can do it that way too. Yeah?
If something already has salt damage, what can you do to make it continue working? Like screws and stuff like that, I find I get salt damage pretty easily on them.
Yeah. The one thing that you can do, if it's salvageable, you could take like liquid wrench, stuff that you get at any kind of hardware store. Apply a few drips to the screws that are acting up. Leave it for about 15 minutes. So this might be one of those cases where you may want to do this in a warmer climate to allow it to work itself in, and then give it a couple of goes. If it's still not going, you may just have to bite the bullet and replace the component. And I'm hoping it's not something that's on your frame. Is it a specific?
No. I mean, just I've had problems here and there with like parts that just try to get salt off it.
Yeah.
It's already screwed up. So.
Yeah, you'll have some mixed successes, but WD-40 will sometimes work, but liquid wrench is a much better solution. So if you can if it does have some chance, if you put the liquid wrench on, let it sit for a while, you might get through it okay. If not, just make sure that you're using kind of low quality parts. Like you don't want to be riding out there with like really high end Shimano Dura-Ace or something like that, because it's just going to get turned to crap in no time. And that way, if you do have to replace it, you're not going to be out of pocket. So that's a good point.
I've heard that like WD-40 is not really good for like I guess for cleaning it's okay, but not for like the gears or like the chain.
WD-40 sucks for your chain. Like it's just it just displaces water. So it's not a good lubricant.
Right.
So I would use it just to basically just add a protective coating, so that water doesn't get a chance to freeze in and stuff like that.
Can you use it on top of your regular lube? Or
yeah, you could. Yeah, I mean, I would prefer just using the regular lube. If you don't have the time to do that, then just use WD-40 in a pinch or something.
Right. But I mean, like, can you just coat it with WD-40 and then glue the lube on top of it, or should you just wash your chain and then degrease it and then glue the lube on?
Yeah, I think you could just do that. You could put the lube over top of the WD-40. The WD-40 will just make sure the water's gone.
Right.
And then you want to have a proper lubricant. So yeah, you could do that, and that would be fine.
And for the lubes, I've heard that there's like this like water base or something like that is for like winter, so it doesn't fall off, or like something like it's stuck or something.
Lubes?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I just recommend chainsaw oil.
Yeah.
It's cheap, but it's very effective. I don't know. Some of the products they can be a bit of a gimmick.
Right.
You buy these little small containers for about $12 at your specialty bike shop.
Yeah.
You'll find it'll be okay, but not for winter. You just want to get
especially
yeah. Yeah, exactly. The other thing, if you can have as many alloy parts, that'll be a good idea too for the winter, so that won't rust up, and then you don't have to worry so much. But I mean, for screws and stuff like that, yeah, you're gonna.
Steel alloy or
like
steel alloy or
Not regular steel, but like a composite, composite of aluminum and steel is like alloy.
Right.
As long as it's not metallic, you know, and it's prone to like, you know,
Right.
if you put a magnet on it and it sticks, you've got like pure steel practically. And if you just put like the magnet on and it doesn't stick, then that's a good alloy and it won't rust. If there's no other questions, I can talk about like riding style. So as Graham mentioned before, we like to use mountain bikes or hybrids, mainly because when you're going out on the street, you're more looking around, you can see everything, and people that are going driving around in their cars or on foot can see you as well, and you make eye contact, and that's a big part of it. It's just people go, okay, yeah, we're going through the stop sign, or it's all good. If you could just say no, sorry, or yeah, all right, I'm going. But the main thing is you just want to be able to like see your whole environment, because when it's the first day of winter and people are trying to get used to driving in their cars, yeah, you're not really. You really want to make sure that they can see you, you can see them. So that's why I do like the upright style. The other thing about winter is you may want to give yourself a lot more clearance. So I tend to ride a smaller frame in the wintertime, just in case I have to really dismount, or if I'm like using my balance, I'm not going to like hurt myself. You can give yourself a bit more time to buckle down a little bit. And then, like I said, for riding, you want to use your back brake as much as possible, because if you apply your front brake, where most of your braking power is, you're going to have more likely a chance of skidding out and then losing control. So always trying to go with your back brake as much as possible. Do a little bit of feathering with the front brake if you want to, just do that. And yeah, as Graham mentioned, making sure that you can be seen by having reflective tape. In most spots, white on the front, red on the back. And then in terms of cornering, if you have to take any corners, I take them a lot slower, and I try to use my body more just to sort of lean into them. The less you have to actually move your handlebars, the better. And just kind of stay more or less upright when you're going on questionable roads where there might be some icy patches and stuff like that. The other thing too is Tour de France, you don't want to get anywhere really fast in the wintertime. You just want to get to where you're wanting to go. Some people like to ride like hybrids with the 700C, or like longer, sorry, not longer, but wider diameter rims, because they'll go a little bit faster. My take on it is, a lot of the used bike shops have 26-inch wheels where you can get these pretty cheap, and if you have to replace like a road wheel versus like a mountain bike wheel, you might save yourself a few more dollars if you opt for something like this. Yeah, that's more or less what riding style is about. As far as apparel goes, I like to dress in layers. So I go for like the cheapest stuff I can, because in the winter things get trashed. So my wife told me that I should burn this, but really I quite like it. It's something I got on my neck. It's a great shell. It's got the pit zips right here, which allows you to breathe. And it's got the reflective coating on it for the most part, so you can still be visible. And yeah, you want to have like bright colors as opposed to the dark colors that I've got, but at any rate, you just want stuff that you don't mind getting trashed. So some people opt for getting nice warm booties and stuff like that. Nah, I just go with like really warm socks and just boots that are going to be okay for something like this. I don't get the baskets, like the things that have the clips on there to get your feet into, just because if you're wearing warm boots, they're not going to fit anyway. And if you have to come off the bike really quick, I don't like clipless pedals or pedals that have baskets on them for that reason. Some people think that you might slip if you don't have the baskets off the pedal, but if you've got a good tread on your shoe, you should be fine. For pant wear, I just, again, you could wear like a shell like this if you have something that's of similar material, or just, wear like a rain pants, stuff like that that you don't mind, getting dirty, and just at least keep your, whatever you're wearing for the day dry, right? So, a good shell that's somewhat water resistant is the way to go. If it's really super duper cold out, these are, a godsend. You want to get goggles. They might look a little bit silly, but it certainly keeps your eyes from freezing, and the sponge on these will generally not prevent, well, it'll prevent your glasses from fogging up, as opposed to wearing like, sunglasses and stuff like that. These are really good. I like my handy gloves from like 20 years, 25 years. They're, again, kind of shot, but, sorry, mitts. These mitts are really good for, keeping your fingers nice and warm, as opposed to like fingered gloves. If you have to get gloves, the claw gloves are really good, because you don't want your hands to freeze. And again, they have like, a liner in them for keeping you warm. And yeah, scarf, yeah, scarf is a good thing, or a balaclava, is good. Stuff that would basically just sort of fit with your helmet on. Do wear a helmet in the wintertime. If you don't want to wear a helmet during summer or winter, that's your business, but helmet in the wintertime is a must. Just in case you ever have to, protect your melon. And yeah, of course you should wear your lighting and stuff like that. A good thing about riding in the winter is, that I forgot to mention, is if you have to take your lane, and by taking your lane, I mean like occupying where a vehicle would be, do so. I find if you go closer to the shoulder, a lot of the roads are kind of like slanted, so that the actual water and the elements will go towards the curb, and if that's really frozen, you're going to likely slip. Plus, when you're plowing the roads, there's always a bit of a ridge there as well, and so you're almost forced to go into your lane. It's no big deal, or if you're not comfortable with doing that because, say, the traffic's going too fast, go on side roads as much as you can, and make sure that they've at least been plowed. I don't like to ride myself when the snowplow hasn't been by, just because things are a little bit unpredictable. So I prefer to ride the plowed streets, and I'm not too worried about if cars have been on there, just because the cars will have basically created a path for you. That's pretty much what we talk about for the winter cycling. I don't know if you guys have any other questions or things that we may not have touched about. Yep.
As far as different types of, I guess, precipitation on the ground, I find that, like, I don't know, you can talk to like packed snow versus snow or ice. I don't know what's like better to go on versus.
I like packed snow myself.
But when it gets to like sort of an icy piece.
When it gets icy, I don't like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Packed snow versus ice. Yeah. If there's if it's like super packed and it becomes an icy kind of surface, it's not good. Like you don't want to ride on, like, say, the bike paths where that stuff is just packed down. You're not going to get too far before you just like find your bike just slide out from under you. Fluffy snow is okay as long as it's not concealing icy snow that's like ice underneath.
Yeah.
Like that's the stuff that really scares me, and that's why I prefer riding on stuff that's either been like plowed away or has been packed down. And unless you're certain that the snow that's on top has come on a day where, say, that there's hasn't been any like super cold weather where the ice might be lying underneath, then you're probably okay to do that. Yeah.
Speaking to that iciness, do you use tungsten carbide type seal bits or do it yourself with some sort of sheet metal screws?
I've done both. I prefer the carbide tips myself, just because I've had too many issues with my homemade studded tire, just causing flats, or the studs may not be in the right spot. The one about the carbon tips though is that if you ride on just bare pavement, they will eventually wear down.
So where would you get them? Where's actually not?
You can get them. I think Mech sells those probably for about $90 to $100 a tire. Yeah, kind of expensive. Or you can get the just regular studded ones for about $50 to $60. I find though the temperatures don't get that cold now to warrant riding a studded tire. But that's just
like
me.
Late February, early March, whenever, or through March when the snowbanks are melting, and then it freezes at night, and then it's like sling. So.
Yeah. That's the one certainly one time where it would be a good idea to do that. If you're confident in your ability to make a studded tire, yeah. It's a very long, drawn-out process. I would go with the best studded tire that you can get, and then just use it when that period in the year, like February, March, where you'll want to bring that one out, and then the rest of the time ride just a regular tire on your front.
I was also wondering about slush and all that kind of stuff in the gears. I don't know if you already covered that, but how would you protect the vitals?
What I would do, after going through a lot of slush at the end of your ride, if you're just going to park for the day, you're coming to school, just do this to your bike, just to get it off, and then leave your bike for the day, go ride it at night. You may find that you have to do the same thing again to get everything engaged at the start of your ride if it's really cold. That's only if it's really, really cold. But I do that just to get the stuff off the bike.
But even while you're riding,
while you're riding, there's not a lot you can do. I mean, your drivetrain is going to get slushed up. What I prefer not to ride is something like this that has all the gears on it, because that is going to get caught up with stuff. And then try and do something with just say riding one cog in the back. The bike that I was showing you there, or get something that's internally geared, if you can do that sort of thing. But yeah, if you are going to ride just a fully geared system, just basically do this to it when you're riding after you're in your ride, just to get it all off, because you don't want to have you basically just don't want to have all that slush and salt eat away at your bike. Or if you have your lubricant, just spray your lubricant on there. If you've got some on hand, and then that'll at least keep it from rusting up while it's sitting idle.
And what kind of stuff, waxes or motorcycles?
I would use just a regular chainsaw oil myself. I wouldn't use the wax-based stuff. That's just fine. Not because I know any better. I just don't tend to use that kind of lubricant. But just regular chainsaw oil is fine. And if you want to sort of clean your bike off before you do that, just spray a bit of WD-40 just to get all the water displaced. Is a good idea too.
I have a question. In my head, I'm thinking about all these things maybe to make my own reflective coat. Do you guys do you know where to get reflective tape to kind of deck stuff out? Where should I look for reflective tape?
You mean reflective tape like this kind of stuff?
Yeah, or even, because I don't know, you were talking about your jacket and how it's cool that it has a little bit of reflection on it. I was thinking, I have an old jacket that I wouldn't mind taping up and doing stuff like that too. So I was thinking, can you even DIY some of your gear?
Yeah, I mean.
But where would I find it? Is most things.
What's that?
Princess Auto. They had them for really cheap.
Where, sorry?
Princess Auto.
Oh, okay, cool.
They can get them to mail stuff to you, I think. So if you don't want to head out that part of town.
Yeah, I know our shop, we've got
big box of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, we got a huge box of the stuff that comes from the city that they use on their signage, all the road signs and stuff like that. So, this is where this stuff came from. It's just stuff that we have lying around. So, if you want to do the DIY thing, you can certainly come by and peel off as much as you want because it's free. The stuff that we have.
No.
Yeah. One question on brakes. What's like safe for like caliper brakes or like cantilever brakes, or what do you prefer? What is?
You want to answer that one?
I like cantilevers.
You like cantilevers?
I personally prefer. I don't know, because on my bike I have side pulls, and side pulls just don't do it for me, I find. But when I've test rode some cantilever bikes in the winter, I find personally that all the bikes that I've test rode that are cantilever tend to have better braking in the winter. That or V-brake is pretty good too. V-brake's another one. Just something to bring them together from the top, I find is good as opposed to a side pull or center pull.
Yeah, I find I like the linear pull V-brake system that most bikes have today, just because it doesn't take a lot of finger power to actually apply the brake. You can just use like 2 fingers on the V-brake thing. Well, that's the other thing too about winter riding. Your sidewalls on your rims are going to get worn down fast if you are not careful. And by that I mean like your brake pads. You may, if you have a chance to take a look at your brakes by, let me just show you here. And you just open up your quick release, like your straddle cable, and then you look at the inside of your pad, just to make sure that there's no sharp objects embedded in the rubber. Because all that time, if they're in there, like bits of metal and stuff, that will eventually wear away your sidewalls. So that's why you don't want to ride like really expensive rims, because they will get trashed in the wintertime. And then you don't also want to ride with disc brakes, because yeah, those are really expensive too. And it's one of these things where you have to figure out, well, do I want to save my rim or do I want to trash my disc brake system? I'd probably trash your rim. Anything else? No?
Maybe you can tell people where you're located, just in case they might.
Yeah. If you want a great place to actually work on your bike, it's at our shop, but it's the other operation that's partnered with us for cycles. So if you ever want to come down to like 473 Bronson, we're really close to Bronson and Gladstone. So in between basically Gladstone and McLeod on Bronson, across from the Petro Canada. You can go and work on your bike like 3 nights a week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, between 6 and 9, and it's like a really great way to basically put some work into your bike at a very cheap price, like $5 an hour. And if you volunteer with Recycles, every hour you volunteer, you get a free hour's use of the shop. So, and parts are quite cheap too. Yeah.
So if someone comes in, like myself with little experience, on one of these nights, will staff or volunteers there help us?
Yeah, they usually have at least one head mechanic plus a shop assistant that's around that can provide you with like guidance. They won't actually do any of the work like for you, but they can certainly show you, how to, basically do whatever maintenance it is that you have to do on your bike at that time. And, yeah, they're quite reasonable in terms of the service is really good, and prices are good too. Yeah.
Just back to rims, you were talking about the trashing of whatever rims. Like, would aluminum rims be best because they don't rust, and then you won't have to worry about whatever's happening where you don't see it, or would steel be better because it won't like get sandpapered as much by all the grit on the road?
Yeah, the aluminum or alloy is the better option to go with, just because you'll find that your braking responsiveness is so much better with alloy rims than with the steel rims. And you want to come you want to stop within a certain amount of time for sure, like if you have to. And that's why the alloy rims would be better for that. They are prone to wearing down, and by that I mean like the sidewall here will eventually go kind of concave, and then you may get rim failure. But that's really after a number of seasons of doing it, and if you're not like looking at your brake pads and seeing if they've gone worn to the point where there's just metal on metal, that's what you don't want to have happen. But I would certainly go with just like a cheap alloy rim that doesn't show a lot of wear if you're looking for a used one, for example. Steel ones aren't, they won't hold up very well, and when they do start to fall apart because of the rust, there's not much you can do to bring it back to life.
Okay, and also just the idea about when going through slush and all that kind of stuff, is it better to have thin tires that cut straight through, or is it better to have the flotation that you get with a beach cruiser or a mountain bike tire?
Oh yeah, I would say the thin tire in the front. Just if you're going through any kind of snowdrift or slush, it doesn't really matter. You're still going to displace a lot of water one way or the other. So that that shouldn't really I don't think make much of a difference. But what you do want to have is you want to have nice wide fenders just to catch all the slush just from going onto your clothes and stuff. Yep. Did you have a question? Sorry, I thought I saw a hand. Yeah.
Oh, also, we filmed the event as well, so eventually we'll be posting it. So if you came in late and stuff, you can check it out. There were some useful tips earlier too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
where will it be posted?
Maybe we could send it on the Facebook page eventually when it goes up.
Or over Carleton?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Oh, great.
I just got off work and there was catering that they left behind a bunch of cookies and baked goods. So if you guys want some of this stuff, feel free to take it. Sorry I didn't come earlier, but.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I was wondering what was going on. You came with trays. I was like, who are you?
Yeah,